Imagine descending into absolute darkness. You're expecting to confront this malevolent, scheming god of death.
Right, the ultimate villain waiting at the bottom of the world.
Exactly. But then you get there and you realize the being you are hunting is actually running like a cosmic hospice care center for the end of the world.
It completely flips everything you thought you knew.
It really does. Welcome to the show. Before we step into the dark today, a quick welcome to this Dark Souls special edition deep dive brought to you by The Haunted Podcast with hosts Gary and Emily.
Definitely.
If you love exploring the hidden corners of the unknown, make sure to like and subscribe to The Haunted Podcast.
So today we're undertaking a really rigorous historical study of an era that just completely defies standard categorization.
Oh, absolutely. It's an era that really resists being put into neat little boxes.
Right, because, when we look at the legacy of rulers, we naturally expect grand monuments, statues bathed in sunlight, neatly archived tales of conquest written by the victors.
We want a clear narrative. Exactly. We want our heroes standing tall in the light and our villains cowering in the shadows. But stepping into the historical records of the Age of Fire means basically throwing that comfortable binary out the window.
You really have to. The landscape is incredibly murky.
It is. So our mission for this deep dive is to uncover the truth behind one of history's most fundamentally misunderstood figures. We're talking about Gravelord Nito.
And, the muddy waters of this era are exactly what make it such a fascinating period of study.
Oh, for sure.
To genuinely understand Nito, we can't just look at the end of his reign. We have to look at the foundational architecture of this entire universe. We have to rewind, basically, to the end of the Age of Ancients.
Right, before anything we recognize even existed.
Exactly. So picture a world locked in this state of eternal, formless uniformity. There are immortal, everlasting dragons ruling over a landscape of just gray crags and massive arch trees.
A completely static environment.
Yeah, completely static. In this era, there is no light, there is no dark, there is no concept of life. And most crucially for our investigation today, there is no concept of death.
Which is wild to think about, just an unchanging diorama.
Right, and then the catalyst happens deep underground.
Yeah.
The advent of fire.
It's the first flame.
Yes. This first flame sparks into existence, and it introduces this terrifying new physics engine to the universe. We call it disparity.
Disparity, right. So suddenly the world isn't just gray anymore.
Exactly. You have the introduction of heat and cold, light and dark, life and death.
And from the darkness surrounding this flame, you get these humanoid figures, right? These empty vessels known as hollows. And they're drawn to the fire and they claim the Lord's souls, which are essentially these crystallized concepts of this brand new disparity.
That's a perfect way to put it. Those four beings claim souls so powerful they actually gain the strength to topple the dragons and construct the Age of Fire.
So they completely rewrite the world order.
They do. Gwyn claimed the light soul, establishing himself as the Lord of Sunlight. And he's the one who took the lion's share of the historical glory.
Yeah, absolutely. He gets all the PR.
Right.
Yeah.
Then the Witch of Islip claimed the life soul. The furtive pygmy claimed the dark soul. And Nito claimed the death soul.
But the subsequent historical texts, which were, let's be honest, often written by scribes heavily loyal to Gwyn's sun-worshipping faction, they tend to flatten these figures.
They flatten them completely.
Yeah, like Gwyn is remembered as this majestic, tragic king, while Nito is almost entirely written off as a generic Grim Reaper.
Just some terrifying monster lurking in a subterranean tomb.
Which is such a massive disservice to the actual archaeological and mythological evidence we have. The deeper you look at the physical remnants of his domain, the more that caricature just falls apart.
It really doesn't hold up under scrutiny.
Not at all. We went looking for a cold, calculating tyrant of the grave, but what we found instead points to a benevolent caretaker, a tragic romantic even.
A ruler whose influence shaped the very mechanics of mortality. And he did it all without ever demanding a single temple be built in his honor.
Right. So let's dismantle that Grim Reaper caricature. Let's look at the mechanics of what he was actually doing down in those catacombs.
Well, we should start with his fundamental identity. His title in the archives is universally listed as the First of the Dead.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt right there because that title has always bothered me, like from a purely logical standpoint.
How so?
Well, if Nito was the very first being to ever experience death, why do the architectural carvings and anatomical sketches depict him not as a single skeleton, but as this colossal mass of bones?
Huh. Right.
I mean, where did all those extra ribs and skulls come from if he was patient zero for mortality, you know? A single humanoid doesn't just generate 1,000 femurs upon dying.
It's a massive biological contradiction on the surface, but linguists and historians approach this anomaly from two distinct angles.
Okay, lay them on me.
The first angle is linguistic rank. So think about human political history. When Augustus Caesar consolidated power in Rome, he adopted the title Princeps Civitatis, right, meaning first citizen.
Right, but he obviously wasn't the chronologically first person to ever live in Rome.
Exactly. It established him as the highest-ranking citizen, the undisputed sovereign. So applied to Nito. First of the Dead establishes his absolute authority over anyone who crosses the threshold of mortality.
So it's a title of supreme dominion. It's not a timestamp. He is simply the king of the graveyard.
That is the political reading, yes. But the metaphysical reading is honestly even more compelling.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Well, remember that the advent of fire created disparity. Life and death were brand new concepts. So when Nito reached into the first flame and claimed the Lord's soul of death, he didn't just learn a new type of magic.
What happened?
He became the vessel for the abstract concept of death itself. The sheer, unadulterated force of that concept likely obliterated his original physical form instantly. So he was chronologically the first creature to die, because he absorbed the lethal dose of mortality required to introduce death to the whole world.
He touches the flame, and the sheer power of the concept just vaporizes his mortal coil. That leaves him as this living embodiment of an idea.
Precisely.
But, that still doesn't explain the anatomy we see in the records. He isn't a giant singular skeleton. He is a giant entity wearing a thick protective cloak made of countless regular-sized human skeletons.
Right. He is literally draped in the remains of other beings.
Yeah. So what's the deal with that?
Well, the mechanics of that cloak reveal how souls actually function in the early age of fire. Claiming the death soul gave Nito the power to manipulate the tether between a physical body and a soul.
Okay.
So the skeletons you see in his domain and the ones making up his cloak operate under a very specific set of physics. In Nito's realm, skeletons are essentially disembodied souls puppeting interchangeable bones.
Oh, so it's a puppeting mechanism. It's like wearing a suit of armor where the soul is just the pilot pulling the levers.
That's a great analogy. The soul is the pilot, and the bones are just the vehicle.
Huh.
It is a stark contrast to the undead curse, which we'll definitely explore later.
Right, where the soul is trapped.
Exactly. An undead has their soul welded to their rotting flesh. They cannot escape their body. But Nito's subjects are entirely untethered. A soul in his domain can grab a femur from one pile, a rib cage from another, and stitch them together using soul magic just to interact with the physical world.
And if those bones are smashed in a fight,
the soul just picks up new ones.
That is so efficient.
On the flip side, ghosts in this historical record are souls that lack bodies entirely. They are pure, untethered spirit. And Nito has absolute dominion over both these empty physical vessels and the wandering souls.
So he acts like a massive metaphysical magnet. He's drawing these wandering souls to himself, and they're pulling this chaotic amalgamation of bones along with them.
Right, and they adhere to a central mass to form that protective shell you mentioned.
It is horrifying visually, but the biological and magical implications are just staggering. He isn't just a monster. He is a walking ecosystem of the deceased.
He really is. And managing an ecosystem of that scale requires a serious administrative structure.
Yeah, you can't just wing that.
No, Nito didn't just sit passively in the dark. He established a highly specialized, decentralized political and military faction known as the Gravelord Servant Covenant.
The Gravelord Servants. Now, the mechanics of this covenant are wild. When I was reviewing the primary sources on how this faction operated, it felt like a reverse neighborhood watch program.
A reverse neighborhood watch. How so?
Well, instead of putting up a sign to keep your street safe, you are intentionally planting a glowing radioactive beacon in your front yard for the sole purpose of attracting heavily armed, violent intruders directly into your living room.
That is actually incredibly accurate. The structure functions exactly like that, serving as this brutal, self-sustaining military filter.
So let's think about how it works.
We have to look at the specific artifact used by the servants. It's called the Eye of Death. When a Gravelord servant activated this artifact, they were essentially utilizing a localized weapon of mass disruption.
Okay.
They spread a severe curse into neighboring territories, or parallel worlds, depending on how you interpret the time-space distortion of this era.
a curse that spawns what the text referred to as black phantoms.
Yes.
And we should really clarify what that actually means for the victims on the receiving end. It's not just a spooky ghost.
No, the curse fundamentally altered the ecosystem of the victim's world. It caused hyper-aggressive, incredibly resilient red aura phantoms to manifest.
So these aren't new monsters, right?
No, they were significantly beefed up nightmare versions of the local flora and fauna, so a standard, manageable threat suddenly became a lethal area denial obstacle.
That sounds awful.
It was suffocating. And the only way victim could purge these phantoms from their territory was to locate the Gravelord Servant's hidden soul sign, like a signature etched on the ground.
And then what?
They had to interact with it and physically invade the servant's world to assassinate them.
Okay, so let's play this out for the listeners. Let's say I'm a Gravelord Servant. I use an Eye of Death. I have now infected 3 of my neighbors' territories with these hyper-lethal phantom monsters.
Right.
Those 3 neighbors are now highly motivated to find my hidden sign, teleport directly to my location, and try to murder me.
Very motivated.
So I am willingly inviting a potential 3-on-1 assassination attempt. What kind of administrator builds a system that intentionally puts a massive target on the backs of their own followers?
An administrator who is entirely obsessed with natural selection.
Ah, so she wants them to be hunted.
Exactly. Nito had absolutely no interest in harvesting weak or mediocre souls. By hiding in dangerous, high-traffic territories, Gravelord Servants essentially baited the most capable, desperate, and battle-hardened warriors into their domain.
It is an automated filtration system.
Precisely.
Yeah.
If the servant survives the ambush and defeats the invaders, they claim more eyes of death from the fallen, and those eyes are then tithed back to Nito.
Wow.
The entire system feeds the Lord of Death the absolute highest quality souls available. It allows him to stockpile immense power without ever having to physically leave his tomb.
It is a ruthless, self-balancing equation.
Yeah.
You either survive and prove you are worthy to serve the Lord of Death, or you die and your soul enters his domain anyway. Win-win for Nito.
Always a win for Nito. But, reviewing the magical artifacts associated with this covenant reveals a really bizarre historical anomaly.
Right, the miracles.
Yes. The premier spells, the Gravelord Sword Dance, and the Gravelord Great Sword Dance. These are miracles that summon massive toxic blades erupting from the earth.
And in this universe, casting a miracle fundamentally requires immense faith, right?
Exactly. You're usually channeling the epic tales of the gods through deep personal religious devotion. Yet, the texts explicitly confirm that Nito's miracles required absolutely zero faith to wield.
Zero faith.
None. The theological implications of that detail really cannot be overstated. The fact that Gravelord miracles require zero faith is the definitive proof that death in this universe is not a religion.
It's just a fact.
It is an undeniable force of nature.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Gwyn. Gwyn demanded worship. He built An Orlando as a golden monument to his own divinity. He required temples, organized priesthoods, and followers who actively believed in his divine right to rule.
He needed the validation.
He really did. But Nito operated on a completely different philosophical axis. He didn't care if you believed in him. Just like gravity doesn't require your faith to pull you to the ground.
Death takes you regardless of your religious affiliation. That is fascinating. But, that paints Nito as this ultimate stoic administrator, just a cold bureaucrat operating a cosmic meat grinder, completely detached from the emotional suffering of the mortal realm.
It really does.
And honestly, that is exactly what I believe until we started cross-referencing archaeological finds from a region located far, far away from his catacombs.
Right, the Shrine of Amana and the adjacent undead crypt. These locations completely shatter the image of the cold bureaucrat.
They really do.
To understand Nito's true nature, we have to examine the factions residing in these distant locations, the Milfinito and the Finito. Historical consensus strongly points to these beings being the direct creations of the Great Dead One.
Which is a title universally attributed to Nito.
Exactly.
So the atmosphere of the Shrine of Amana is a massive departure from the pitch-black skeletal horror of the catacombs. We are talking about a subterranean marshland filled with bioluminescent flora and glowing, tranquil waters.
That's actually quite beautiful.
It is. And residing in this marsh are the Milfinito. These are immortal maidens, and their entire existence, their sole biological purpose, is to sing.
And the purpose of that song reveals the core of Nito's compassion. But we have to contextualize the era first.
Right, the undead curse.
Yeah. We've mentioned the undead curse, but we really need to explain the mechanics of the dark side to understand why the Milfinito are even necessary. As the first flame began to fade, Humanity was afflicted by the dark sign. It's a literal brand of fire that appeared on the flesh.
And this brand fundamentally breaks the cycle of life and death, right?
It shatters it. When a person with the dark sign is killed, they don't move on to Nito's domain. They resurrect at a bonfire.
But it isn't a clean resurrection. That's the horror of it.
No, it's not. Every time they die, humanity leaks out of the brand. They lose pieces of their memory, their sanity, and their purpose. They slowly degrade into a state known as hollowing, becoming mindless, violent husks.
And because of this terrifying degradation, the undead were universally despised by the living. Society viewed them as an infectious plague.
They were violently hunted down,
shackled, and locked away in these remote, crumbling asylums at the edge of the world, left to rot in a state of eternal, maddening decay. They were the ultimate outcasts of the Age of Fire. The living world totally rejected them.
But the Lord of Death looks at these outcasts, these broken people who are metaphysically barred from even entering his domain.
Right.
And he doesn't ignore them.
He actually does something about it.
He expends a massive amount of his power to create a cosmic hospice. The Nito song is specifically composed to comfort those afflicted by the dark sign. It acts as a palliative anesthetic for a curse that he didn't even create.
And we have vivid environmental evidence of just how powerful this palliative care is. I mean, if you navigate the swampy waters of the Shrine of Amana, you encounter these mutated undead lizard men.
Right, the ones lurking in the deep water.
Yeah. These are undead who have been submerged in these waters for centuries, and their bodies have grotesquely adapted to the environment. They are straight-up monsters. Yet when the Nito sing, these terrifying, mutated creatures do not attack.
They just sit there.
They sit peacefully in the glowing water, completely pacified in a tranquil trance. The song temporarily halts the inherent madness of the hollowing process.
It's a breathtaking image, isn't it? A terrifying lizard monster just sitting quietly, listening to a lullaby, finally finding a moment of peace.
It's incredibly sad.
Compare that to the other Lord's souls. Gwyn is desperately hoarding humanity to artificially extend his age of fire, throwing his own knights into the kiln to burn.
Right.
But Nito is doing the exact opposite.
Well, if his ultimate goal is to comfort people and provide a peaceful resting place, why is the Tomb of the Giants such a nightmare?
The security system.
Yeah. You drop into absolute suffocating darkness. You have to navigate these treacherous, narrow ledges while giant skeletons shoot arrows at you from the void, and you are actively hunted by massive, bone-crushing skeleton beasts. That doesn't look like a hospice. It looks like a slaughterhouse designed to terrorize anyone who enters.
I get why it looks that way, but you have to distinguish between projecting aggression and maintaining defense. The Undead Crypt and the Tomb of the Giants were never intended to be fortresses projecting military might into the world.
Okay.
They were designed as places of absolute eternal rest. The hostility you encounter in those areas is a reactive immune system. It's purely defensive. You're an uninvited intruder walking into a sacred mausoleum. Nito built those defenses to protect the sanctity of the dead from those who'd exploit them.
Exploit them how, though? We are talking about, grave robbers stealing trinkets?
Grave robbing is a minor nuisance compared to the actual threat. We're talking about occultists and necromancers.
No, right.
There were entire factions who actively sought to weaponize Nito's power. The historical records specifically document a figure known as Pinwheel.
Pinwheel.
Yes. Pinwheel was a necromancer who successfully infiltrated the catacombs and managed to steal one of Nito's most closely guarded artifacts, the Rite of Kindling.
Let's explain the Rite of Kindling for the listeners because it highlights exactly why Nito needed such lethal security in the first place.
Go ahead.
The bonfires in this world are fueled by the bones of the undead. The Rite of Kindling is a dark magic ritual that allows a person to burn physical humanity, which are fragments of the dark soul, to artificially stoke the flames of the bonfires, making them burn brighter and stronger.
Exactly. The Rite of Kindling is a massive manipulation of life, death, and humanity for practical gain. Nito, as the absolute sovereign of the dead, guarded this right.
Because it's too dangerous.
Right. When Pinwheel stole it, it proved that the living world would not hesitate to pillage the domain of death to serve their own ends. So Nito's giant skeleton beasts and archers were not there to terrorize innocent travelers. They were deployed to ensure that the power of death could not be stolen and used as a weapon in the wars of the gods.
You know, if a necromancer breaks into your cemetery with a shovel and dark magic, the caretaker has every right to unleash the guard dogs.
Exactly.
It reframes the hostility of the catacombs as fierce protection of the vulnerable. But Nito wasn't just a stoic guardian of the dead. There is a layer of personal tragedy here, too.
A very deep layer.
Unearthed artifacts deep within his tomb suggest a profoundly emotional reason for his isolation. He didn't just lock himself away to protect his domain. He was hiding from a grief he couldn't process.
And this is where the deepest chambers of Nito's tomb pull us out of military history and drop us squarely into forensic archaeology and comparative mythology.
This is my favorite part of the deep dive.
It's fascinating. When early explorers finally breached the absolute lowest level of the Tomb of the Giants, they discovered a startling architectural anomaly. Resting directly beside Nito's massive sarcophagus is a second, equally large coffin.
And the lid is open?
The lid is open, and the coffin is completely empty.
An empty, giant tomb sitting right next to the Lord of the Dead. It instantly begs the question, who was supposed to be in there?
To solve that mystery, we look at the physical items scattered throughout the catacombs and map them onto real-world ancient myths, specifically the Greek myth of Hades and Persephone.
Right. So in Greek mythology, Hades, the god of the underworld, falls deeply in love with Persephone. She's the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest.
Yeah.
Hades abducts her, bringing her down into the realm of the dead, which causes her mother to plunge the surface world into a bitter, barren winter out of sheer grief.
That's the myth.
But how does that map onto the bleak skeletal architecture of Nito's domain?
It maps perfectly when you look at the pottery.
The pottery.
Yes. Scattered extensively throughout the catacombs are these massive ceramic jars. In archaeological terminology, these are known as pithos. In ancient Mediterranean cultures, a pithos was a massive storage container, specifically engineered for grain and the agricultural harvest.
They were used to store food.
Right. They were often buried halfway into the earth to keep the grain cool. But in the catacombs, these harvest jars have been morbidly repurposed. They are being used as makeshift coffins to store the dead.
That is such a jarring visual contrast. You are taking a universal symbol of life, agriculture, and the harvest, and you're dragging it deep underground to be used as a receptacle for corpses.
It really is. And the harvest imagery goes even deeper. Hidden within a labyrinthine section of the catacombs is a premier artifact known as the Great Scythe.
Now, in modern pop culture, we heavily associate the scythe with the Grim Reaper. It's a weapon of death.
We do. But the historical item descriptions in the archives explicitly clarify that this specific scythe was designed as a wheat harvesting tool.
Wait, really?
Yes. It was an agricultural implement, not a weapon forged for war. It is literally a tool of the harvest, somehow brought down into the absolute darkest place in the world.
The implications of that are wild. You have an empty coffin, grain storage jars used as graves, and a wheat scythe hidden in the dark. Is it possible that Nito, the monstrous lord of death, actually fell in love with a goddess of the harvest? Did this universe have its own Persephone?
The architectural evidence in the capital city strongly supports the existence of such a goddess. If you travel to Anor Londo, the seat of the gods, you find prominent statues depicting a mother goddess. She is holding a baby, surrounded by stalks of wheat, and carrying a basket of bread.
Wow, so the pantheon clearly included a harvest deity.
It did. The question historians debate is the nature of the relationship. Did Nito violently abduct this goddess's daughter, triggering a curse upon the world? Or, in a departure from the Greek myth, did she choose to go to him willingly?
Did she carry her harvest jars and her scythe down into the dark out of love, only for tragedy to strike?
Exactly. Whatever happened, she is gone. The coffin is open and empty.
But there is a chilling piece of auditory evidence that haunts this entire theory.
The scream.
Yes, the scream. When Nito casts his signature miracle in battle, the Gravelord sword dance, where he plunges his hand into the earth to summon those toxic blades, the magic is accompanied by a highly distinct, localized audio cue. It isn't a roar or an explosion. It is the agonizing, echoing scream of a woman.
It is a deeply unsettling anomaly in the auditory record, and historians are really split on its origin.
What are the theories?
Well, is that the mother goddess's rage, permanently echoing through the earth because her daughter was taken into the dark? Or is it the cry of Nito's lost love, her spirit forever bound to the magic of the tomb?
Man, if you lean into the tragic romantic angle, it completely recontextualizes Nito's entire disposition during the Age of Fire.
It really does.
Think about it. As the first flame fades, as demons pour out of Izalith, as Gwyn sacrifices himself to link the fire and the world slowly collapses into an apocalyptic twilight, Nito does absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
He doesn't wage war. He doesn't try to claim the other Lord souls. He doesn't attempt to link the fire. He just sits in the pitch black.
Right.
It wasn't apathy born of malice or some grand, sinister plot. It was the profound, paralyzing depression of a grieving widower. He is sitting idle beside an empty tomb, holding on to the agricultural artifacts of the woman he loved, listening to the echo of her scream every time he utilizes his magic, simply waiting for the end of a world he no longer cares about.
It provides a profoundly humanizing perspective for an entity constructed entirely of bones. He engineered a sprawling, beautiful system through the Nito to comfort the dying souls of the world, but he himself was trapped in an inescapable state of mourning.
Which is just heartbreaking.
He curated a realm of perfect, undisturbed dark. Perhaps it was originally intended to be a quiet sanctuary for him and his love, away from the politics of the gods. But with her gone, that sanctuary became a solitary confinement of his own making.
But the universe doesn't care about his grief.
No, it doesn't.
The fire is fading, the world is collapsing, and the prophecies dictate that the Lord's souls must be gathered to satiate the kiln. The outside world was inevitably going to come knocking on his door.
Which brings us to the chosen undead's breach of the tomb and the fall of the first of the dead.
The historical assassination of Gravelord Nito is basically a masterclass in military tactics, environmental warfare, and preparation.
Oh, absolutely. The chosen undead didn't just kick the door down and charge in with a sword and shield.
No, it was a desperate, highly specialized tactical breach into completely hostile territory. Nito's inner sanctum was located at the very bottom of the Tomb of the Giants, an environment defined by absolute suffocating darkness. You literally could not see your own hand in front of your face.
The records show that warriors attempting this descent had to equip specialized gear just to see the ambush coming.
What kind of gear?
Well, they utilized the Skull Lantern, which is a gruesome artifact that casts a meager, localized pool of light. Or they relied on the cast light sorcery.
Just to see 2 feet ahead of them?
Exactly. The sheer psychological terror of navigating a pitch-black cavern, knowing you were being hunted by giant skeleton beasts that can crush you in a single bite, is staggering.
It was the ultimate endurance test. But simply reaching the deepest chamber wasn't enough, right? The actual battle with Nito required incredibly specific strategies to counter his unique magic.
It did. Historical combat accounts show that the most successful warriors came equipped with divine weapons.
So I want to break down exactly how divine weapons function in this universe because it perfectly counters Nito's power.
Go for it.
We established earlier that Nito's magic acts like a magnet, allowing souls to puppet interchangeable bones. If you hit one of his skeletal guards with a standard steel sword and smash it to dust, Nito's passive aura just pulls the soul and the bone dust back together.
They endlessly resurrect.
Right. But a divine weapon fundamentally alters that interaction. Divine weapons are infused with a specific frequency of light magic, originally derived from the Way of White and Gwyn's faction. When a divine weapon strikes one of Nito's skeletons, it doesn't just break the bone. The holy magic permanently severs the tether between the soul and the physical vessel. It cuts the puppet strings. Striking his guards with a divine weapon permanently exorcised them, effectively stripping the Lord of Death of his infinite regenerating army.
It is a brilliant tactical countermeasure. You aren't just fighting the skeletons. You are dismantling the magical infrastructure keeping them alive.
Exactly.
The archives also indicate that stealth played a massive role in this assassination. The arena was vast, and the back of the cavern was filled with colossal, dormant skeletons.
Just waiting to wake up.
Right. If an attacker ran in wildly, they would wake the entire room and be instantly overwhelmed. So warriors utilized artifacts like the slumbering dragon crest ring, which magically muffled the sound of their footsteps.
Oh, smart.
By staying absolutely silent, they could keep the engagement contained to the front of the cavern. This forced Nito to slowly lumber toward them, while his heaviest hitters slipped right through the fight.
It was entirely about controlling the engagement zone and managing aggro. However, when we look at the mechanics of Nito's defense during this battle, there is a fascinating discrepancy in the historical archives.
Yes, the contested records.
I love looking at the cut content and the contested records. Some of the early drafts of history claim that as Nito took physical damage in the fight, the skeletons making up his protective cloak would detach and swarm the attacker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every time you struck his mass, pieces of his armor would literally peel off, hit the ground, and try to stab you.
It is an utterly terrifying biological defense mechanism, and it actually...
agitating the souls of burning and shell.
Right. But why isn't that the accepted history?
Well, military historians synthesized that while this defense mechanism existed in early drafts, it was likely deemed too chaotic.
Oh.
Or perhaps it was misreported by panicked survivors.
Makes sense.
The final, canonically accepted account of the battle shows Nito relying on a much more devastating, albeit tragic, tactic: his toxic miasma.
The miasma blast. So instead of his cloak detaching to fight you, when Nito was pressured, he would curl inward, gather his energy, and unleash a massive area of effect explosion of pure death magic, a shockwave of entropy.
And what is most revealing about this miasma tactic is its indiscriminate nature. The blast was so concentrated that it temporarily overwrote the reanimation magic holding his own minions together.
Oh, man.
When Nito unleashed the miasma, it didn't just damage the chosen undead, it shattered his own skeletal guards. He was willing to destroy his own subjects, breaking the very ecosystem he cultivated just to defend his resting place.
Which really raises the ultimate question regarding his defeat. We're talking about a lord who possessed a soul powerful enough to defeat the everlasting dragons. A being who commanded the very concept of death and mortality. Why did a lord of such immense world-shaping power fall relatively easily to a single lone warrior wandering into his tomb?
The sad truth of the historical record is that the entity the chosen undead fought was a hollowed-out shell of its former self.
Yeah.
Over the countless eons of the Age of Fire, Nito had already offered the vast majority of his Lord Soul's energy to the concept of death itself. Think of it like a massive battery that has been slowly, quietly powering a life support machine for 1,000,000 years.
Right.
He poured his power into creating the finito, establishing the milfanito, and maintaining the natural order of death in a world that was violently resisting it through the undead curse. By the time you unplug that battery to fight a war, there's almost no juice left.
He had given all of himself away to comfort the world. What little power remained in him was undoubtedly burdened by his endless grief for his lost harvest goddess. He wasn't plotting world domination, he was just profoundly tired.
Precisely. He was an exhausted caretaker who had stayed at his post long after the world had moved on. He was sitting in a dark, empty tomb, waiting for an end that seemed like it would never come, fighting a desperate final battle just to be left alone.
Next time you walk into the Tomb of the Giants and see that empty coffin, it completely reframes the entire descent into the dark. We started this historical study looking for a Grim Reaper. We expected to find a monster hiding in the shadows, plotting the demise of the living.
But we didn't.
No. Instead, we found a grieving, benevolent caretaker, a lord who wanted nothing more than to grant peace to a cursed world, who used his immense power to build a hospice for the shunned, and who isolated himself in sorrow beside the empty tomb of the woman he loved. It shatters the caricature of the master of the catacombs.
It entirely rewrites his legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And, it leaves us with a final lingering question to consider regarding his end.
What's that?
Well, the historical texts say that the chosen undead killed Gravelord Nito to claim his soul. But if Nito's grand design was a world of perfect, peaceful death, free from the suffering and the endless, unnatural cycles of the fading fire, and if he had already surrendered the vast majority of his soul to the concept of death itself, long before the warrior ever arrived, did he truly die? Or did the chosen undead simply free Nito to become the very fabric of the world, finally allowing him to rest in the dark he so carefully curated?
Mm-hmm.
Did the assassin actually grant the Lord of Death his final wish?
Man, that is a thought that will stick with you the next time you find yourself navigating the dark. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of mortality. And one last reminder, if you enjoyed uncovering this hidden history, make sure to like and subscribe to the Haunted Podcast to continue exploring the hidden histories of the dark and the unknown. Until next time.